Second. All right, I'm clicking the button, brother. We're going live. Pulling up the notes. Scrolling. Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance, weekly scrap number 162. He is a firefighter with the Everett Fire Department in Washington. Been a firefighter for 13 years. He teaches engine company operations for Brothers in Battle, the Snohomish Fire Training Academy, West Coast Fire Training. If you want to see some really awesome live fire video, West Coast Fire Training, check him out on YouTube. If you have not read his stuff, do yourself a favor, go to ECR and search for Jay Bonnifield, then go read some great information because this man loves to share information. Last, but honestly most important, he is a husband and father. 4 kids, right?
4, yeah.
4. It is my pleasure, Jay Bonnifield, to have you on as the guest of Weekly Scrap number 162.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Pleasure to be here again, and always good to chat with you. So yeah, that was intro was right on there. And yeah, man, four kids. My wife and I were just talking about it the other day, like, how the heck did that happen?
Just blinked.
Just blinked, and all of a sudden it's just chaos and anarchy going on outside. So I'm up sheltered in the playroom up here, and yeah, I can hear the kids. There's roller skates, baseball bats, and cricket rackets that are being used as swords out there, and they're like jousting right now. So I'm sure
just a hint of danger.
I'm sure there will be blood.
Right. Just a hint of danger. I really do appreciate you giving me your evening, and especially with the kiddos and everything like that. Is there anything I missed in the intro? Anything you would like to add?
No, man, that's it. Just
I had it that you were on Engine 1, I believe. Engine 1? Are you still rocking Engine 1, or did you move?
Nope, still rocking the big we call it the Rucker Rocket. So we're on Engine 1 downtown there, and man, been there for a while, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. So
good.
Busy rig, and sleep is not one of our fortes, but it's a lot of fun to ride. So we got great crews there, and you know, busy station keeps us all occupied, and man, the guys are second to none there. So
1,000%. Audience, please get your questions ready for Jay and myself. This is going to be a rock and rollin'. Me and Jay can sit and have like a breakfast and talk for 2 or 3 hours on some nerdy stuff. And so this is going to be an exciting scrap if you're into that kind of thing. Brandon Pfaff says, let's go, with 3 exclamations. Gigi Galasso is here saying, good evening, gents. Going to be another great scrap coming from Jason Schneider. That's where the snap came from. Love it. Yes, let's go from Taylor Turner. Okay, so hype. People are getting in, and this is the best part. Kyle is here. He is going to type your questions in the chat because Kyle is going to pull them out. And that's the best part about this, is because he really does find the best questions. But even better than that, he sent this. I'm in. I have a few questions for Jay. I already typed up because that's how exciting this is to have Jay on here. Even Kyle's amped up to get it in. So, where was I at? Oh, yeah. Sponsors. We're going to do that. This episode is brought to you by Key Hose. Check them out on Facebook. The Hose Experts. Speed Swivel. The solution for stolen and vandalized sprinkler and standpipe connections. Check them out always. Speedswivel.com. Affordable Drill Towers. Firefighter owned and operated. The only thing that you can't do in an affordable drill tower is live fire. Affordable Drill Tower. You can rappel, stretch hose lines, go through the stairs, go through the floor, do window bailouts, cut holes in the roof props, use the apartment balconies, pump into the FDC, or flow water from the sprinkler system. Call Steve, 844-55-TOWER, or drop an email, info@affordabledrilltowers.com. Last but not least, Fit to Fight Fire. Man, I love John Spear, everything he does.
I'm wearing a shirt right now.
Rocking, yes, perfect.
There we go.
Huge fan of everything he does. He believes our level of fitness and training will make the difference between life and death for others. And it's just, you can't argue with that mission statement. Providing us the purpose and discipline to consistently train. Head on over to fittofightfire.com to prepare and to be a part of the community where you will get a daily workout and so much more. Fittofightfire.com. And I got to do this, and it goes out to my brother from North Carolina, Alexander Alves. Happy birthday, my man. And that's it. We're ready to rock and roll.
I just got a text, a screenshot from my Southern Belle Zach King down in Austin Fire down there. So
Yes.
shout out to Zach. He's originally from up here, so I'm gonna claim rights to him, but we're loaning him to Texas, so he's on loan right now.
I didn't know he was a Pac Northwest guy.
Oh yeah. No, if you get him a loan, cut him away from everybody else when he's wearing his 10-gallon, or the big hats and the spurs and the boots and all that kind of stuff. And you get him away, and he'll throw on his Birkenstocks and get real picky about his coffee, just like the rest of us up here. So
Love it. Okay. No, I didn't know that about Zach. That's awesome. Okay. Manny Barajas has the first question coming at you, and I wanted to throw it at you real quick before we get deep into it. He said, question 1, will you ever promote?
Well, I don't know if that's up to me, but so yeah, I took our last promotional there, and did pretty well on it. So just kind of hanging out, and we'll see if that's in the cards for me if my name gets called. But it's something. I'm not, I'm in a great place where I've got a awesome crew and I love what I do, and I could ride backwards on the fire engine for the rest of my career and be totally happy. But promoting up into the company officer position is definitely a new challenge, and it's something I've been lucky enough to do a lot of acting over this summer. I've been pretty much filling company officer positions all summer long, and it's been a really good new challenge for me. You do something in one domain and one headspace for a long time, and it's just good to look at the same job from a little bit of a different angle. And I remember it was kind of funny. I was talking to some folks about my first acting shift, riding up, and hopping on the rig that day. I throw my gear on the rig, relieve the guy, the captain that was off going there, and I had an awesome crew. I couldn't have asked for a better crew for my first time in the seat, and I got this feeling as I was logging the rig in and going through all those kind of morning steps there. It kind of reminded me a lot of when my wife and I got, you have your first baby and they had nurse or whatever, you're on your way out, you're going to leave and go home from the hospital, and they hand you your baby in the car seat for the first time, and you're like, oh shoot, this is on me,
I'm responsible for this now.
I got to raise this kid. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of that. I was kind of gut check in the morning, but I am it's definitely helped. It's definitely helped to, be excited for a new challenge, and also, just learning that, man, you really got to trust your people. I mean, I'm privileged to work with some very, very experienced people, and, they see good calls on a regular basis and they know how to handle them. And so it definitely it's very comforting knowing that you work with good people. So
right on.
That's definitely eased the transition a little bit. That initial oh, it's all on me, and then you realize no, it's not, man. It's a team effort, and we're gonna be just fine.
And we will see how the process plays out. So, not many people I move to the front of the line, but anytime Brian Brush asks a question, I move him to the front of the line. And Brian Brush wants to know, Jay, what is the most glaring disconnect you see in taught fire behavior versus actual fire behavior from your program? From your program feedback?
The most glaring disconnect. So I mean, there's a few different ways you could go with that. Couple right out of the gate are so I'm trying to organize how I want to approach this one.
Right on.
Different structures. Depending on the type of structure that you're teaching fire behavior in and whatnot, there can definitely be some. So like a one end of the spectrum, you've got maybe like a class.
Now, are you saying classroom structure? Or are you saying fire building construction structure?
It's like fire building.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah. So the type of structure that you're putting the live fire environment in. So you can have concrete burn buildings, you can have Connex boxes, you can have acquired structures, all that kind of stuff. And there's I kind of look at it like a little bit like the fire growth curve, like it's on kind of on a spectrum, right? And they each do a good job of teaching different things differently. The problem is when you'll have people try to simulate a live fire environment in one of those type of structures, and they try to paint it like it's the whole spectrum of what they're going to see in the field. And so they each have their strengths and weaknesses. Connex boxes are really good at high repetition, and now there's a few things that they do. There's a few things they don't do super well, and you can do some things like FDTN does some great work with how they layer the boxes and how they do build out with OSB and sheetrock and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
You can put some work into them to get them a little bit closer. But the bonus with a Connex box system is it's going to be high repeatability. You get a lot of heat, you get a lot of repetitions, all that kind of stuff. But what you don't get, even if you do a lot of build out with them, is you don't get super realistic angles within the building and layouts and all that kind of stuff. Which that plays that you get. You can stack them together and you can kind of put man doors in them and whatnot, but you're not going to get like super realistic layouts, which that when you're talking about water placement, water mapping can really make an effect downstream.
Right.
The fire behavior specific for the fire behavior specifically, if you are demonstrating fire behavior in like a concrete burn building, you're getting, contents fire, you're getting more often than not, it's a very lean fire behavior. And so you're kind of missing the rich to lean fire development and some of that like rich to lean flashover that's really hard to show within that kind of environment. And so, but that's one of the things that we have to make sure if we're teaching somebody that they've seen that in order to see the full spectrum. Connex boxes, you can get away with it a little bit more, but with Connex boxes, they are so just because of the nature of the metal and all that kind of stuff, there's so much, the surfaces are so exothermic that it does kind of create a pace of fire development that can be a little bit misleading, and it's hard to get that like rich to lean light off. Whereas in an acquired structure, you're going to have a lot less repetition, but you're going to be able to demonstrate that rich to lean light off and actual pace and rate of change a little bit more accurately inside an acquired structure as opposed to the other ones. That doesn't mean that the other ones aren't valuable, because that repetition, like repetition in heat, repetition in limited visibility, repetition on contents fires, repetition on like landmarks such as that fire is extending beyond the room of origin, and how for me that's a trigger point of, hey,
Sure.
flowing and moving is going, once that fire starts extending beyond the room of origin, I want everybody to walk away with, that's when that push is going to be your go-to, that 10 to 20 feet outside the fire room, cut your angle, boom, and then flow and move down towards the fire room there. And then couple that with a realistic layout where that you're talking about approaches that are perpendicular onto rooms, or you're talking about, like, one of the things that's really hard to simulate inside any sort of a fixed facility that's not an acquired structure is living rooms, because those fixed facilities they're good at hallways. They're good at hallways and bedrooms off of the hallways. But we missed a lot of the bigger spaces, the living rooms and the kitchens and so on and so forth. And really, like, those are kind of the fighting a fire down a hallway into a bedroom is kind of like bowling with the guardrails up. Like, you kind of almost can't go wrong with it, and so that's kind of an easier fire in my experience. It's the ones where you're talking about like bigger spaces where there's not confinement and compartmentalization in between them, right? You're talking about like living rooms, kitchen extending to the living room, meet you at the front door. And so when you get into that front door, you've got a lot of fire 90 degrees left, right, downrange in front of you, and then you've got to make you've got to make that approach through that doorway into the kitchen. That's a different type of fire than a fight in a hallway down to a 90-degree angle.
Right.
So those things are, I kind of hope I didn't rabbit trail too much there with that one, but
dude, I'm loving it, man. Already.
That's where you get a little bit of a disconnect there. And in my experience, like my first fire behavior classes, they were all taught in concrete burn buildings, and so we were taught to utilize a lot of visual aids in like using our eyes to key in on when to flow water and all of that kind of stuff. Everything was very visual.
Right.
And I'm sure we'll talk about kind of my first fire a little bit later there. But what I quickly found out was reliance on vision it's possible, but it's not necessarily probable even. And so you have to be very careful that you're not just arming people with a sight line in order to make decisions off of, because you don't always have a sight line.
Right. No, I love it. Dude, already, man. The weeds is already getting good, man. Yeah. All right, I'm going to catch you up with what people are saying. Tony Nunez said, "Good evening, brothers. Let's do some fireman sheet." I like it. Manny Baraja says his recommendation for the batting cage approach is spot on. Using a burn barrel with a backside vent is very intriguing. Greg Redmond said, "My answer is that Jay and others teach the shit the right way, so I guess there's not much disconnect." That is a very good evaluation, from what I understand, since I've not got to take your class personally. All right, I'm just catching you up. I don't want to miss anything. Yes. Okay, now I love this question coming at you here, and it builds right off everything else. And it's coming from Kyle Romagus, so you know it's good. Jay.
Oh, yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, Manny posted a cartoon rendition of a building fire with a 3-man engine arriving first due with victims trapped. Don't know if you saw it or not, but it was a pretty good looking cartoon. Your explanation of the consequences of leaving the fire unchecked and attempting the rescue was pure gold. Can you elaborate on that mindset?
Yeah, so
I wish I had the picture. I wish I had the cartoon. If someone has a link to it, post it or message it to me, and I'll post it in the chat. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was good. It's a good discussion to have, and kind of right in the wheelhouse. I think of a couple of important things that are really like easy discussions to have as a crew. There's a couple of scenarios you want to have down, in my opinion, as a crew. They're like good icebreakers, all that kind of stuff. One of them is, hey, what do we do when we bump into a nozzle or bump into a victim with the nozzle, right? And that's one, like right out of the gate. You walk into a crew fresh for the first time. Like if I'm out acting or something like that, and we want to do, and I can't think of something we're going to do for a drill or whatever, and I want to break some ice with the crew, one of the first things is that question right there, because that's going to spur a lot of really good discussion. And then another thing would be that basically that fire, which the picture they showed was one bedroom, one window of fire showing on floor 2. It was like the Bravo side of the building. Obviously the fire started on floor 2 and it's one room of fire. And so that, I can't remember if he said that there was report of victims trapped upstairs. I think it was that there was report of victims trapped. And essentially what the crux of it was is, are you going to, are you going to forego extinguishment?
Right.
Go and pull off the search.
Right.
What my answer was that there's absolutely zero reason on a floor 2 fire that started on floor 2, that is on floor 2, you got one window of fire. There's zero reason why, any 3-person and above company can't stretch a line into the stairwell, call for water, and extinguish the fire, and have somebody branch off and go and either isolate the room and take the victim out the window or pull the victim down. I mean, it's just it's not, you do not have to choose. You do not have to choose one or the other. And really, like in that play, yes, you are choosing extinguishment, and the extinguishment, you're doing them simultaneously but you're kind of choosing extinguishment and then branch off and go and get that search of that person.
Right.
And I think one of the things I find kind of a little bit like mildly hypocritical is, if we're gonna say like, when it comes to vacant buildings, somebody says, "Oh, the building's vacant, everybody's out of there, blah 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 blah." Right? If we're gonna say that we don't trust people when we show up, we don't trust people that the building, like it's clear when we say it's clear, is what we want to say, right? We're not going to trust people saying the building's all clear and take their word for it.
Right.
Hey, man, I agree with that. Yep, we're going to go and search. We're going to go and search and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of mildly hypocritical, I think, to say on the flip side of that if we show up and somebody says, "Hey, I think there's somebody," or whatever, there's somebody in that room right there, we forego fire attack in order to just go off of the word that they say that there's somebody in that room right there. We're going to forego fire attack in order to go after that person. And what you're sacrificing or potentially sacrificing is, if we're saying on one hand, they could be wrong, which they are a lot of times. They are. People move, right? They're not where they thought they'd be. This is all, when it comes to the everybody's out of the structure conversation, these are all points that have been brought up ad nauseum, that people move, they're not where they think they are, they're stressed out, they forget all of those things. Well, that same thing, we have to be consistent that the same conversation pieces need to come up in this discussion where, hey, if I forego water and I get up there and that person is not in the place where I was reported they were going to be, I'm probably writing that person off. I mean, not like I'm writing them off, but like I probably just wrote their death certificate, to be honest. Right. Now at this point, I don't have a hose line, I don't have any ability to knock down the fire, and that fire is now extending up there, and I'm probably not going to be able to get back out into those common places in order to go get that person. So I just, you don't have to choose one or the other there. One firefighter can stretch a line into a stairwell, call for water, and then knock it out from the stairs. I mean, it's not a hard fire. And one window of fire for any single firefighter in the country, that should be something that is totally doable. I mean, from 3 stairs down in the stairwell, you're going to be able to hit every room in that top floor in the picture that he painted there. Use your reach of your stream, knock it out, and have your number 2, whoever's backing you up, go up and start searching for that person and get him out of there. But shut the problem down so that we can get the search off. That way we create a margin for error for ourselves.
Oh, dude, I cannot say about it. Dude, that's so good, man. So good. Anthony Casana said, "Can I remove the IDLH faster than I can remove the person, or will it be quicker to remove the person from the IDLH?"
And that's a great point, AC. And like AC is he's one of our boys from up here. He's
okay.
Solid as they come, man. That guy is he's a spitting fire all the time and just is gung ho and man, I'd have him on my rig any day. But there is a certain amount of, I want to shut down the IDLH. I want to eliminate the heat, vent the smoke, all of that kind of stuff. I want to locate the person, and I also want to have a margin for error for if there's more than one person, right? Like you go on the firefighter rescue survey, right, and you can pull up the stats about how it likely, if you find one person, there's more and all that kind of stuff, right? And I don't want to just have this. I'm banking all in that there's one person, that person is right here in this room, that this person under stress and duress is going to tell me exactly where they are. Like I want to be able to give myself a little bit of buffer for those situations where there are more than one person, because if I don't, then essentially again I'm kind of writing their death certificate because I'm trying to put too many eggs in one basket.
Yeah. No. I'm going to keep throwing stuff at you because it's coming hot and fresh. Kyle Romiga says, "Jay," and I love it because it ties back into the structure you were talking about earlier. What are some things that can be done during the prep of an acquired structure to ensure that many burns can be achieved before it begins to deteriorate?
Yeah. So kind of what we go for in our building prep is we use a lot of OSB for prep work. And so that, we played around with sheetrock and all that kind of stuff. And what sheetrock ends up with is it gets really brittle. It gets brittle, and the stream comes in. It just totally like carves it up and ends up with a lot of you end up with just so much like slop on the ground afterwards and so much extra overhaul that it's really not worth. So we'll leave the building as is, right? You've got the normal sheetrock like is in this room right here.
Right, right.
I was like burning in this corner, and I decided like I'm going to load my fuel in this corner. Then what I would do in this corner is I would reinforce it with a layer of OSB on the ceiling, on the walls, and then I would kind of take that OSB and I'd kind of run that OSB towards the door that I want fire to kind of blow out.
Okay.
And really you want those upper 2/3 or sorry, the upper third of the kind of that corridor that I want the fire to really feed down. I want to give it some fuel going down those that corridor there with some OSB. And so, look at the common areas. Like if you have 3 bedrooms in a common hallway between the 3 bedrooms, that hallway is going to get beat. And so you want to be able to reinforce it with some OSB, and especially in those seams in the upper edges there. And you want the OSB to be, it's going to have about 2 burns is what you're going to get out of it to tear it out and then put new stuff in. If you let it go too long, it's not necessarily the degradation. You can get degradation, but it's more that it's not contributing as fuel now to that environment. And so OSB, call it like candy, right? It's candy for the fire. It kind of creates a lot more of that like snottier, nastier, rich, vent controlled. If you add a little bit of that OSB, you end up now too much, and you end up with a kind of an unrealistic rate of development. Too much OSB, you end up with like it's just a really there's not enough like sustained seat flame and like sustained heat on the seat. It develops too fast, and so
it's almost too much heat release rate, and it's just all the fuel's just ate up.
Yeah, but the fuel's too light. So what you want to get is a good mixture. When you're doing Class A burns, you want to get a good mixture of pallets are really good at containing a lot of heat at the seat and kind of driving that OSB. You want the OSB to kind of light off secondary.
Okay.
And so you do like a mixture of pallets, a bunch of pallets and OSB on the seat. And what that's going to do is you want to light that in a way that you get a good sustained, like deep-seated burn within those pallets first before it starts extending to the OSB. Because when you do it that way, and it's kind of like you're doing one and then the other, what you end up getting is you end up getting a fire that responds to your nozzle and your stream a lot more accurately to the real world, which is it's not just going to necessarily like leap off of your stream as soon as your stream punches into it. When you've got too much OSB and the OSB goes too fast, that OSB creates a lot of gas. Gas flame extinguishes. So there will be a difference between like the gas flame and the seat flame, right? The gas flame that's extending off of that seat flame, that gas flame extinguishes super fast. Like it's all surface fuel, that gas flame. And so as soon as you open up your nozzle, boom, that stuff's going to kind of get hit and get knocked out pretty quick. But it's that sustained seat flame that's driving the gas problem. That's what you really want to be able to have on the back end of that to kind of sustain that burn, to make that nozzle work for it a little bit more. And so that seat flame is limited. It can essentially, like the old rule of thumb that I learned was that seat flame can extend 1.5 times the height of the ceiling. And so that seat flame is like the clean burning, leaner. It's closer to the fire. It's the actual seat of the fire extending out of the room. It can extend about 1.5 times the height of the ceiling. That gas flame is going to be like that dirtier. It's that dirtier flame that's kind of crawling off of that and so that's more of that smoke burning. And so that's going to go out a lot faster. And then that seat flame, though, that's not going to actually extinguish until your nozzle makes that angle on the seat.
Right.
And so that's what you want to be able to have both of those parts working accurately. And if you burn that gas flame off too fast, then it's just going to be that fire is just going to go out. It's going to go out really quickly. And it's not going to actually make you work for it.
I love this, dude. If you're a fire nerd, man, this is like the shit. Does it like doubling up, like back, always doubling up on sheetrock and all that kind of stuff? Does it help to double up on the OSB and give you more burns, or is it a diminishing returns?
No, it's diminishing returns. So we played around with that a bunch. Doubling it up, really what it makes it is more overhaul work because it's not going to burn. It chars the outside of the OSB, and then it's kind of going to slow down your fuel contribution for chars, right? And so doubling it up is just going to add to that, and it's going to make it. You're going to tear it all off. So what we do is we typically factor 2 burns for a room, and we're talking burns where the entire room is going to flashover, right? Okay. And flashover is defined as for us, the floor is burning. So in order for a room to flash over mechanically, the floor has to burn. So what you'll see is that a lot of people like they see, rollover in the upper levels. Okay, cool. There's fire up there, but that room is not flashed over. You feel a massive jump as soon as the floor lights off because the top level is going to be burning and it's going to be a lot of that radiant light source energy is going to be hitting the ground. That floor is going to start off gassing. When the floor off gases, that's a precursor to, hey, the room's about ready to light off. As soon as that floor starts to burn, you'll see this big kick. And when that flashover happens, it'll kick a bunch of heat out into the hallway, but and all that kind of stuff. You can see it when you're out in the living room. Boom, it just comes rolling down the hallway. Like,
massive increase in the velocity and everything.
Yeah. And so you're ending up now with energy that's now from all of those directions kicking down that hallway as opposed to just kind of unidirectional over the top. And so that's what you want the floor to burn. In order to do that, you have to have so much fuel in that room to drive that flashover. And so when we do 2 burns, after that second burn, and especially when you're making that push down the hallway and you're talking about water, 20, 30 seconds of extinguishment, 160 gallons a minute, you end up doing that a couple of times. That room now needs to settle for a bit and we need to dry it out because if we can't dry the floor out, then we can't flash the room over.
Right on.
Right. So you got to kind of let it sit, go to a different room. We also run into problems with like second floor fires where if we start burning on floor 2, we're like, yeah, we're going to get after some floor 2 fires. And then later on in the day, we want to go down to floor 1 and start burning on floor 1. And we realize like, oh, some of our water went down and it got the floor wet on floor 1. That's going to throw us off because now you can't make the room flash over.
Which is a very vital thing to lock away in the back of your brain, that if the floor is soaking wet, the room cannot flash.
Yeah, it can't.
I mean, is that safe to say, if according to your experiential experiences?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If the floor is wet, if the floor can't burn, then you can't get flash over in that room.
Boom. When you talk about the floor package, is there carpet? Is it just OSB? What are we talking about when you say the floor off gassing and burning?
Yeah. So we've done.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we've done both in there. So there's a difference between like a true NFPA 1403 burn.
That's kind of where I was heading. I was wondering, like how do you get around certain restrictions Yeah. So there's, I won't go into like test burns or anything like that, but a true NFPA 1403 compliant burn, we've got to remove the carpet, right? Which that's fine. The floor, you're still talking about a wood floor, right? We're still going to have wood subfloor, all that kind of stuff. And so you're still going to you're still going to be able to drive that room to flash over. Okay.
Not doing it with carpet. And so, having pallets, having OSB, like all of these 1403 compliant materials, you're still getting all of that. You're just, sometimes you have to work a little bit harder for it, but it's totally doable.
Right. Okay. No, and that's not my intention. Someone said, "Don't pin him down like that, Chief." Like that's not my intention at all. Because
no, you're just you're good.
I love digging into it because, like, is it possible to coat the floor in OSB? Just like you would the hallway, to get you some more of those realistic conditions as you learn and expand your knowledge.
Yeah. So I'll kind of say this is like a little bit of a caveat, right? Because I talked a lot about OSB, and I don't want like somebody to walk away with taking notes, be like, oh, here's how I'm going to structure our, this is this is just kind of some experience that I've gained using these materials, right? And one thing I will absolutely caution everybody with OSB and burning is it can make everything take off really fast. And so you have to have 1403 compliance, and you have to have people that know exactly what they're doing, and it takes more than one person. Like, this is one of the biggest things that I've learned in all of this kind of stuff is you have to have more than one person that is very well versed in when you're doing acquired structures, in acquired structure burns, because if it's all on one person, there's gonna be gaps. And we've had gaps before where, hey, you use too much. The scariest rooms to me are the ones where it's 100% fresh OSB and there's too much of it. Like, when there's too much fresh OSB, that room makes me very nervous to light off, because it's going to go very, very, very quickly. There's going to be a lot of gas flame, and we've gotten, we've had some near misses and stuff like that with rooms like that. Derek Roberts, one of my, really good buddies up here, him and I got, caught in a hallway on a room that was a freshie like that. And it really scared the crap out of us. So
right.
I want to really make sure to caution everybody with that it's not just a matter of like plugging in a bunch of OSB and all that kind of stuff. It's not that. It's there. You use them. You want to use them in conjunction with each other because they are 1403 compliant, but you do not want to use too much OSB, because you will. That's a good way to get somebody hurt by using too much stuff.
It's almost like, does it almost get past modern fuel heat release rates when you get to that point?
Yeah.
Okay. No, and that's scary enough. Zach King chimed in and said, "What's up, Rev?" So just had to throw him in there because we talked about him earlier. I don't know if he was in here when we were talking about him earlier.
Zach, he was here. He knows.
William Van Brenner wants to know if you, and here's the deal. We had a list of questions we were going to go over, and we haven't even got to them yet. That's the crazy part. We're just going through audience questions. It's been phenomenal. So William Van Brenner wants to know if you know there's an entrapment and it appears to be just the single bedroom fire mentioned, do you trust a can to get a knockdown so you can focus more effort to the search, or do you still go with the 1 3/4?
I mean, if I'm on a truck company, I don't have an 1 3/4, then I'm going to take the can in and do what I can, right?
Right.
But no, if I can pull an 1 3/4 line in there, it's totally within the capabilities and should be of every 3-person above engine company in the country to be able to stretch an 1 3/4 line within a few seconds into a, because really that situation, it was a floor 2 fire that started on floor 2, right? And so floor 1's going to be clear. No, like, we don't have to play the what if game and this and that and the other. If floor 1's not clear, then the fire did not start on floor 2. Then you have other problems, right? In which case you're going to want that, you're going to want that 1 3/4 line. But
I got to do the Kurt thing and say, write that down. Write this down. Floor 1's not clear. It didn't start on floor. Yeah, didn't start on floor 2.
Yeah, if floor 1 has smoke on it, then it started down low. So at that point, you do have other problems. But in the situation given, it's a floor 2 fire. It started on floor 2. It's on floor 2. Like, okay, go get it. It should take you seconds to stretch that line into the stairwell. Call for water as soon as that water hits the tip. Down in, send it in the room, and it's knocked out. I'm not going to mess around with the can, all of that kind of stuff. If that's my crew and, we're showing up and I'm riding in the officer seat, I can totally see as you tell your firefighter to, grab the line, start stretching in the stairwell. I can see grabbing a pump can real fast and making a beeline to the stairwell and knocking it while you're ahead of them. That's totally fine. But that's like in addition to, that's not necessarily that I'm not making that my only play call, right?
Right.
So that's in addition to, but the bread and butter of my operation is that firefighter should be able to stretch that line in the stairs.
Love it, man. Manny's got more for you. Would just wetting the floor, now, you may have to clarify on this a little bit, Manny.
Yeah.
But would just wetting the floor eliminate the flashover if access was limited? So I'm not sure if he said taking an element out of the heat flux equation. So I'm not sure if that's enough information to answer the question or not.
So sorry, what was the question one more time?
Would just wetting the floor eliminate the flashover if access was limited? So I'm not sure if he's asking if you could just hit it hard from the yard on the floor.
I mean, so I, I think at that point you kind of get into the what if realm a
Right.
little bit.
Sure.
You know, if you can wet the floor,
Oh, he said burglar bars, for instance. So he threw that out there. So it was a little bit.
sure, sure. So yeah. I mean, you're still going to want to, rip water, downrange into the overhead and punch as far down as you can, and then wet the floor. Like even in burglar bars, you can still angle your stream around a little bit. You're not just going to have to hit the floor. I mean, it's a holistic approach, but the water on the floor, is a big part of that. And so, there you kind of gotta address it holistically, but
Okay. No. That's why I wanted. I wanted to get the little more context.
yeah.
Man, he's still coming at you. Would you want as close to a 1-to-1 vent profile when making an attack when possible? Meaning, would you want all the windows busted on the intake side or the exhaust side, or as equalized as possible?
So as far as like backside ventilation and stuff like that,
We're saying wind's not a factor. We're just saying straight up intake versus exhaust.
mm-hmm. I mean, it basically as soon as the attack starts and you're starting to get water, once the attack starts and you're on the attack corridor and you're starting to get water, effective firefighting water downrange, towards the seat, not necessarily on the seat just yet, but once the nozzle's in place, it's making that final push towards the fire room. I'm not going to get like caught up on needing a certain ventilation profile. To me, just more is better. Right? Like I want it all. As soon as the extinguishment starts and I'm confident that I've gained the upper hand with the stream, I want it all. I want that building opened up as fast as possible. And just everything as fast as possible, because the faster we can get that building aired out, the better it is for the search crews and the victims and all that kind of stuff.
So go to Dennis Laguerre. As soon as we get water on the fire, make the box as porous as possible.
Yeah, yep, exactly. So focusing on like a 1-to-1 vent profile during the push, getting a little bit into the weeds there, because I'm not going to ever ask somebody if I'm getting effective water into it, and I'm getting effective extinguishment and we're anticipating I'm getting a hold of this thing. Unless I have a below grade fire, a wind driven fire, hoarding conditions, something like that, then I want to get, really, really greedy with ventilation, because I'm winning. I'm going to win. Now it's just a matter of how much better can we make everything in this building really fast. And part of that is on me as a nozzleman or the nozzle crew, is to hydraulically vent, like crazy as much as possible. So I want to be able to, vent. And that's more than just, a little squirt out the window. That's, dude, if you're going to be in the fire room after you get that thing knocked down, while the number 2 on the line is taking a hot lap, searching the fire area, all that kind of stuff. The nozzle, whoever's on the nozzle, can be sitting there hydraulically ventilating. And you cannot vent enough, in my opinion, with that. So you're just going to make things better.
Love it. Mandy said, I have a man crush on Jay and I'm not ashamed. Laugh out loud. I think it's the glasses personally. I think it adds like at least 20 IQ points.
Oh, dude, I need that. I graduated high school with a 1.6 cumulative.
I love it. I
gotta wear the glasses to bring it up a little bit.
Kyle said, Jay, what are some of the most common mistakes you have seen firefighters make when taking parking lot flow and move tactics into a building fire?
Yeah, so
I really like that question. I really do, because I think there's huge value in the parking lot, so I don't want to downplay it. But at the same time, what are the downsides that people can learn from? Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to walk on you.
No, you're good. No, that's kind of it, right? There's so tempo is one where there's an audible feedback in the parking lot where you're slapping the ground, your stream, basically, like when you're in a parking lot, your stream's shooting up into the air, right? And so you're not getting any audible feedback up top, but you're getting audible feedback every time your stream slaps the ground. And so what you'll see a lot of times when people go inside buildings is like they build this rhythm that they probably don't even realize that they have, where they're just slapping the stream back and forth, boom, 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 because they spend so much time in parking lots. And so then they get inside a building, and buildings have angles, doorways, overheads, all that kind of stuff. And so they come away with a poor understanding, or they establish kind of a poor understanding of how your stream should take the shape of the box you're in. Right. So when you're in a hallway, you're boom, 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 and you drop that thing down, you're not just sitting there slapping back and forth in the hallway. If I went into a hallway and I just started slapping the stream back and forth, I'd be basically putting water like 45 degrees left and right on either side of me, and my stream would be reaching about 6 feet in front of me. Right. I'm not reaching down the hallway and then into the room that's on fire. Right. I'm just slapping around in the hallway. And so you end up with kind of this like single angle that people they'll get good at, like one single angle. Well, like, I made the analogy earlier of fighting fire in a hallway is kind of like bowling with the guardrails up. Like they're good bowling with the guardrails up, but then all of a sudden you take the guardrails off and you talk about a living room. Well, that's different shape than a kitchen, that's different shape than a hallway, that's different shape than a bedroom. And so instead of matching the stream to the space they're in, they just kind of have this bang, 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 right, with this emphasis on slapping the ground,
because they are matching the box when they're in the parking lot, the back pad, whatever. They are matching the box, but it's a training scar when there's actually a box.
Yeah, and it's also different. Like when you're trying to put water through a doorway, right? You're coming up to a doorway that's like perpendicular to you, and you don't want to be doing this, right? You want your stream going through that doorway, and so you're going to be tracing the inside of that doorway on the way through. You're not like slapping that thing back and forth, because if you slap that nozzle back and forth, now what you're doing is you're missing that whole doorway. You're not, and you'll see people do this all the time on like the tick footage. There'll be fire just blowing through the door, and they're hitting everywhere but where the fire is coming from. They're like, dude, would you put the water through the door? That's where the fire's at, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, duh, when we're sitting here talking about
it. No, of course.
Yeah, and so you end up going in there, and there's a big disconnect. So you end up with that. You also end up with kind of this, I call it like fixed bayonets and charge like rhythm, where every time they open up, and I've been guilty of this too. Like I'm saying this because these are things that I have learned.
You're not throwing stones. You're actually looking in a mirror.
Yeah. Totally. No, these are
yes.
And so where you open the line and you just start moving forward, right? And the best pushes on the fire ground are, in my experience, they're the slowest. They're the ones where the person opens the line, hang out for a second, let the tool do the work, right? Let that nozzle eat for a little bit, hang out for a second, make sure that's, take that shape of the box. If it's a big room, I'll kind of trace some Z's, boom, 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 top to bottom at some different angles, come back up, and I'll bring it up and down, up and down, up and down a few times before I finally, what I'm looking for is there a glow that's going to come back through a doorway? If you're coming up underneath a fire, like from floor 1 to floor 2, and you're starting your fight in the stairwell, like the worst that fire can do is it can burn to the floor, right? And then that's it. It's going to find a way up and out at that point. It's not going to like burn back down the stairwell. And so when you're coming up from underneath a fire, what you get is, as soon as you start extinguishing that overhead, that common space, you look for where's that glow coming back from. And that's what tells you where the seat is, right? Same thing when you're on playing with it, you're in like a living room or kitchen or something like that, and you start to, work that room a little bit, and you darken it down. And I'm trying to see, because that seat flame is going to continue to drive to try to drive into the room. I'm
recognizing that rebound.
Yeah, where's the rebound coming from? And then put my stream kind of in that general direction. Is it going to be exact? No, but as you can do once, if you're stationary and you get a good water going down towards where you think that seat of fire is, and then you start moving towards it, you're going to be able to hold that stream in that general direction of where that fire is, as opposed to if you just open and start moving. Now you're basically at the mercy of your tunnel vision. Your ears aren't working as well. You're focused just on slapping the stream around, and then you get lost really fast. So you stay oriented better, and when you slow down, things just go better in general. I mean, I cannot go slow enough.
It's more than just slow is smooth. It's just it's giving it a chance to actually do what it needs to do so that you can react to what it's doing. Is that oversimplification?
No, I mean that's it. It's not just slow is smooth. It's slower is genuinely better. When you open up that line and the slower you move up on that thing. Obviously, there's such thing as too slow, or but
sure.
You're typically flowing half as much and moving twice as fast as you think you are in a fire, right? Because you're amped up. And so I've had times before on the nozzle where I thought I was flowing forever. And then, afterwards I find out I was, flowing for 7 seconds or something, whatever.
Please say that one more time, because I walked on it and it's a great sound bite.
So you're flowing half as much and moving twice as fast as you think you are when you're on a fire. So it just time sped up and you're amped up, and things are rocking and rolling. And so if you can force yourself to slow down, and if you force yourself to listen, I cannot say how important listening is on a fire. You figure out where it's at. You can hear it snapping and crackling and popping. I mean, obviously, there's the whole locating victims, all that kind of stuff, but just listening to how your stream sounds, listen to where the fire is at, all of that kind of stuff. You gain so much more, and you force yourself to slow down. When you force yourself to listen when you're amped up, it slows you down.
I agree. Smooth Bore Cartel said there is no need for any more scraps. Just play this one every week. I'm not sure how that is for the long-term health of what I do, but yeah, I really do enjoy this. Rob Fisher wants to know, please ask Jay. Rob Fisher, one of my favorite people on this planet, said, please ask Jay, what's his greatest challenge he's facing as a firefighter in today's fire service?
Ooh. The greatest challenge that I'm facing as a firefighter. Shoot, that's a good question. Let's see. I would say the greatest challenge that I think the greatest challenge right now, like for me personally, is man. I'm trying to.
Rob's locked him up. We did it. You did it, Rob.
I'm trying to figure out a way to articulate this without spilling all our department's dirty laundry, because I don't want to do that. But stuff's tough right now, right?
Sure.
And,
oh yeah, no, I'm not asking for that at all. And
I know. I'm trying to articulate that. I work
trying to answer the question without getting in the weeds.
Yeah, exactly. I work for a great department, love where I work, wouldn't change it for the world or anything like that. And, our call volume has always been high, and our call volume went up like 20% this last year. And our people are just getting ground to a pulp. Right. And so we are, it's hurting. Right. And we're getting a lot of like mandatories. And so essentially what I'm getting at is, staying in the game and staying on the for myself on the path towards trying to maintain excellence and pursuing excellence and growth and all of that kind of stuff in an environment that is it's been unrelenting. And I think all the folks at work would probably say the same thing. I mean, you're right. It's nobody's fault in particular. There's a lot of departments that are in the same boat. I know I'm we're not the only ones, but it's tough when you just feel that pace and that tempo just really grinding you down. And I think it's a challenge that I wanted. Like one of the things that drew me to my department was that it's busy. And I love that. But then there's busy, and then there's like soul crushing busy, right?
Yeah.
And you
Yes.
end up kind of on that end of the spectrum where, um, at that point it's hard to you got to get really creative with how you get your training done. You have to be really good at targeting specific, like isolating specific things, getting stuff done fast without pulling a bunch of stuff out of service and putting on another company that's now got to soak up your runs while you're out doing stuff. And like our folks are really good about it, but it can only go so far, and you've got to get really good at targeting and being very disciplined about, like, we're going to drill this today, we're going to spend this much time doing it, I'm going to work out at this time, all of that kind of stuff. You've got to be very, very, very disciplined with it. And one of the things for me that one of the things I had to do over this last year, was about 6-7 months ago, I kind of had to just cut out alcohol. Like that just became something. And it wasn't that I had a drinking problem or anything like that. It was something that I just started to look at the way it affects my sleep, the way it affects my recovery, all of that kind of stuff. And I wasn't like drinking a bunch off duty or anything like that. It was just something that I kind of had this point of, I need to start looking at effective ways that I can maintain excellent, as much recovery as possible. And I started noticing, like, hey, if I have a beer with dinner, it affects my sleep at night. And so I have to be really stingy with my sleep and say that, like, that's my time, and anything that's going to affect it, like, I can't control. Obviously we got 4 kids, and our youngest is 8 months old, right? That's an effect on my sleep, but that's one that I'm totally, hey, that's fine, that's life. But alcohol is something that's a choice. And so, what if I gotta kind of give that up so that I can, because really the way that I look at it is, my wife is an incredibly hard worker, and she's made a lot of sacrifices, and I love her to death, and she works very hard in the home, and taking care of the kids. And so my job is what provides for our family. And really the only way I'm going to get through this pace is is really by keeping my body intact. And so I have to be very, very smart. I have to be very intentional. We invested in, making sure that I've got a good gym here at the house. So there's no excuses. It's staring me in the face every day. There's no excuses not to work out. Work out around the kids. Sometimes I'm not working out till 10 o'clock at night. Well, tough. That's what you got to do. And then cutting out things like, alcohol or whatever I've got to do in order to make sure that when I show up to work, my body's going to last until until retirement, so that my family can be provided for. And so that, when I'm there at work, I'm actually able to keep up with that pace. Cause yes, right now in my 30s, it's going to be different when I'm in my 40s and my 50s. So that's my biggest challenge personally right now.
And so you can enjoy them once, like you said, once you retire, 100%. Now,
Yeah.
Now, out of my own personal curiosity, because just recently I quit drinking for a month and 4 days, and I can actually count a month and 4 days. That's how important it was to me. But I told myself, as long as I can do that, then I really don't have a problem. In spite of my excuses and justifications, how is it going for you, and where are you at on it? Is there anything that's working for you, or have you worked it down to a system, or tell me where you're at, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no problem. So, I will basically, where I've reserved like alcohol to is, alcohol for me is something I don't carry it at the house. So I don't have any at the house. I don't, I will drink, like if I go to, like we were in Mile High Conference like a couple weeks ago, right? And that was the first time I've had anything to drink in a long time. And I'll have one, maybe two, and then that's it for me. And so I just save it for special occasions,
Mm-hmm.
So we had 4 of us from our department at Mile High, and we were down there hanging out, and it was something, it was a special occasion. And so have my 2 beers, and then that's kind of it for me. And so I think more just being disciplined and relegating it to being something, treating it like a dessert or something like
Right.
that. not going to have a dessert every night, right? And I'm not going to keep like cake in my fridge or anything like that. But you know, if
Sure.
out to dinner with the wife or something like that, on the rare occasion we get to go on a date night and somebody wants to take all four of the kids, you know, then okay, I might have a piece of cake. But you know, I'm not. It's not a regular staple of what I consume. So
No, absolutely. No, and I'm not trying to turn it into anything beyond tactics and things like that, but it does
yeah,
massively infatuate me, and I have a high curiosity factor when it comes to that. Uh, Taylor Turner, I like this question. I want to throw it at you. Taylor Turner says, people often tell me learning so many nozzle tactics can overcomplicate the job. They tell me, just put the wet stuff on the red stuff. Is there a balance between learning tactics and keeping it simple? I'm prone to overthinking, but want to be the best I can. So I love that question. I mean, where do you land on that?
so no, I think he's exactly right. Where here's the deal. There was I forget who the quote was from, but the quote said, uh, it was talking about making decisions in, you know, high stress and dynamic environments. It said that basically your solutions need to be as simple as they can be, but not simpler, right? And so put the wet stuff on the red stuff. That's too simple, but it shouldn't be much more difficult than that.
Okay. No, I love that. I love that.
So like when you start getting into the weeds, you're gonna have, you know, and everybody likes to throw that like 80% of your people. I forget what the old it was, like Heraclides quote or whatever, the quote about 80% of the folks are good fighters, you know, 10% are, you know, and then there's the one, right? Like I mean, it's a cheesy quote, right? It gets overdone a lot, but the way that I kind of look at a well-run, well-functioning fire department is you have people who are like kind of they're that 1%. You want people that are like that 1% in certain specific domains, right? Like if my thing is hose nozzle fire attack stuff, I don't want to be the guy that's like chiming in on how the ladder should be specced out and all of the search stuff and the forcible entry stuff and the, you know, EMS this, and I don't because really you can't be great at that many things. Like you can be really, really great at something, and really contribute in that area. But to, you know, you want to pursue, that doesn't mean you don't pursue greatness in those other areas, but that means your department should be having people who are like really passionate about these certain things, and then they're feeding back into the rest of the folks, the rest of the 80%, right? And so when it comes to like to something like this, part of the job of that I view somebody who, if you are, you know, your department's whatever subject matter expert on hose, nozzle, fire attack stuff, then part of your job is to distill that information, distill the complicated down to usable read and react decision making points for the rest of the troops, right? And then because I don't care about like the going out and doing a bunch of research into EMS stuff, but I do want somebody who is super passionate about that to go and learn the nuts and the bolts and all the, you know, here's where the wires are crossed and anatomy and physiology stuff. Like I don't care about that stuff, but I want you to go and learn it, distill it down, and then tell me the distilled down, like here's the nuts and bolts of what to do on a scene, right? That makes us better. I want to know it. I just don't have the bandwidth to be able to go and learn all of those ins and outs on all these different disciplines. It's too much. So yeah, I think there is the putting the wet stuff on the red stuff with fire attack specifically is too simple, but there is you know, too complicated. So if you're plugging somebody with too many choices to make on a fire ground, really any more than three is kind of the magic number. That's about when we reach our capacity. If you have any more than three decisions to make, then your ability to process more variables in that is, I mean, it's a crapshoot at that point. And so you want to be able to like at a, you know, we're going to talk about like door reads and stuff like that, right? Is it on my level, below me, or above me? There's my three reads right there. Could I get more in the weeds with that? Yeah, I could. Like the first door read that I was taught about, you know, watching the neutral plane, where the neutral plane is coming down, and all this and that and the other stuff. And ventilation ratios, and like it was way too much for a fire that at the end of the day, it's on plane and I'm going to go crush this thing. So why do I need to know about all of these different, vent ratios and all of this kind of stuff? Because I can't control it that well. Two, too much information slows me down. And three, also too much information can actually lead me astray. And there's this thing called the Pareto's principle, and it's that 20% of the information yields 80% of the outcome. And so essentially what it means is you need a lot less information to make a decision than you think you do. And there's a curve that when you go down the backside of the curve, once you get beyond about 20% information, it's diminishing returns down the backside of the curve, and it actually makes your decision-making ability reduces the more information you get. So...
Dude, I love it, man. You're starting to get into Pareto, and the thing I love about God bless. The thing I love about Pareto, you can actually dig into it. The 20%, 20% of that 20% actually is like the 80% of the initial decision, and so it actually starts compounding on itself, and it's so beautiful. 100%. There's so much coming at you, Taylor. Yeah, I love that. And then Ramaga said it was an Einstein quote about simple but not simpler. So
is that Einstein?
That's what I can't verify, but Ramagas did. So we'll go with it.
I trust him.
Yeah, I do too. Jay, this comes from Kyle since we're talking about it. What are some of your takeaways for the engine company from the latest UL search study?
So I'm still kind of really trying to dive through it and process it and stuff like that. I think. So, like one of the big takeaways is, we talked about a little bit earlier with like sequential ventilation and post knockdown ventilation, all that kind of stuff, and just how important that is.
Right.
That's definitely something I think that was that I noticed was really brought to light and re-emphasized and kind of proven again with this study, and maybe it was something that there was less emphasis on it prior, but looking at it through the search lens and through functionality for the victims and stuff like that, just how important we call it coordinated ventilation, but I'm just gonna like on a residential fire where you're talking about, fire being, I've got a charge flowing 1 3/4 line that I have the ability to flow and move on. A fire that's on my plane, I'm not dealing with a below grade fire, wind driven or hoarding conditions. Really at that point, I'm going to crush this thing. I'm dealing with a couple rooms of fire. I'm going to crush this thing. And so I really want, when I'm talking about like coordinated ventilation, I'm not talking about one window being opened on the backside. I want it all, right? I want you just, when I start getting water on the fire, let's blow this thing open and let's go, right? You use the word porous. I think that's a great word to use for it. And then the hydraulic ventilation. So that's one thing. Something that I'm trying, and I would love to talk to, and I've been meaning to reach out to like Ladine and some of these guys, because I want to start dialing in a little bit of just my personal threshold for, hey, at what point is it better to, drag a victim out the way you came? And at what point is it better to, isolate them in a room and then go out a different path, right? Because there's taking them into a room and then dealing with, either a window cut down or over a sill or something like that. It's not always, it's not always a super quick way. But also, taking them out the way that you came, and the distance and the exposure that they're going to maintain along that route. I just want to, for me personally, start diving into a little bit more of like being able to. I don't need an exact here's the 10-foot mark or whatever, but just a little bit more so I can make a good decision when that time comes of taking them in a room and sheltering versus taking them out the way I came. Obviously, if the way I came was on fire, that's probably going to be,
Right.
out. But there's a lot of those. Hey, I was moving along through the smoke and bumped into a victim, and hey, they're close to a door, so I could take them in there, shut it, and then take them out a window. One of the things that we have emphasized a lot in our department is window cut downs. It's been something that's always been a part of the playbook, but it's been something that we've really tried to emphasize with a lot of our engine company training. So our area we've been doing some, blue card stuff for a long time, and I won't get into the blue card. Not going to go down that rabbit hole. But one of the things with blue card that they have is they establish a on deck crew, and so that's been something that we've been trying. A common practice for our on deck crews is they always come forward with a chainsaw, and they anticipate if a victim gets located. First thing they're going to do is anticipate the nearest window to them and just turn it into a door.
Turn it into a door. No, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that helps, because if you can get them in that room and you shut that door and you isolate, and then you have a door to go out and just flop them out of the building that way, flop them onto a ladder that way or something, then that really helps tilt the scales into a little bit more favoring isolation, as opposed to dragging them down that smoky hallway. So I want to make that route as accommodating as possible, because I think there is a lot of benefit to be gained there. You just have to make sure you don't end up getting, hung up at the sill forever.
Right. And see, in my jurisdiction, I live in the Clay Bottom, Oklahoma, River Bottom, and we have Acme brick, and every house, even the cheapest house, has a brick facade. And so
right.
Turning windows into doors is not as great an option when you have that brick facade out front.
Yeah.
So you have to know your jurisdiction, absolutely. Jay, this comes from John M. Sullivan. It's a different kind of question. How important do you feel training for roadway incident responses is? As in responder safety while working in, on, or near roadways or traffic?
So, yeah, definitely. Yeah, we have a lot of freeways,
right?
And so for us, it's very, very, very common. And this is something culturally, because of the busyness and the pace of all the rigs. I mean, there's nowhere to hide in our department. There's not like a slow station you can go to. And so this policy was not like super popular right out of the gate, but it's become something that everybody's kind of realizes is just, it's important, and we're just going to suck it up and take care of each other. So any road where we're 50 miles an hour or over, we typically like a standard car wreck is a single company response to start out, right? And so if it's a 50-mile-an-hour road or greater, then we're going to send 2 companies, and one's just a dedicated.
Nice.
So, and there was a lot of complaining when it started out and stuff like that. I mean, for good reason, right? Like you end up with, it's not like we're resource heavy. So when you have 2 companies tied up on a car wreck, or you don't even know if there's injuries or not, I mean, that's not nothing. Now we're definitely vulnerable for, other high acuity calls and stuff like that. So it's not without downside, but I think everybody's recognized, the likelihood, I've always said, if I bite it on the job, it's probably not going to be on a fire. It's probably going to be on the freeway. So
right.
That's something that makes me very nervous. And it's something that I don't take lightly. And none of our guys do. It's most of our close calls come out on stuff like that. So,
and I want to add in, because I kind of try to articulate this in the proper way, but what I'm saying is like on the fires, on the decision making and things like that, there are basics you can drill down into and take off the table and make yourself, into that special forces thing where it's all about taking the basics off the table. You know what I'm saying? And that's the separation factor. With the highway, I don't know if there's a lot of basics you can drill down into and take off the table beyond shutting down and making it safer. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I would add to that, like, on the
down to the individual tactics, the individual competence really doesn't affect if an inattentive driver is going to decide to plow into your scene.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to for me is on the fire ground, you're dealing with a fire that is governed by, the laws of thermodynamics and nature. And on the freeway, you're dealing with people, people driving very
People
high.
driving like this.
Oh my gosh, we were on a wreck a couple months ago that was we were out there for a long time, and it was just blowing my mind. We had the freeway shut down to one lane, and people were driving by with their phones streaming the whole thing. You're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
idiots, what are you doing? So, yeah, yeah, freeways are no joke, and I definitely say, hey, blocking rigs are, um,
Yeah. Systemically, we can make it better in our response. I'm not sure that on the task level we can really improve the safety. I haven't given that a lot of thought, but that's kind of my little brainstorm
yeah,
in this talk. Jay makes me feel smart, so I tried to throw it out there. All right. Uh, all right, we're actually going to get. I'm going to ask you some questions that because everything so far has been none of the questions we had planned. Something we both love, Mission Critical Teams Institute, MCTI, man. 100% decision making under stress. How do we develop expertise? How do we maintain expertise? How do we construct and maintain high performance teams? I just want to hear your thoughts on it because I know me and you both love MCTI and both listen to it a lot. But go ahead and give me your overview as I try to segue to that as smoothly as possible.
yeah, yeah. So, um, developing expertise, maintaining expertise, all that kind of stuff. So obviously there's a lot of different layers to that, but I think one of the initial is, um, how you're training people is very, very, very important, and you have to become um, our tendency, I think, in the fire service is to go checklist driven,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
there's task sheets or checklist or whatever, and so we kind of do the cookie cutter, and we got to be careful, especially in like new hire training and whatnot. Are new hires training in a way where they're just trying not to fail?
Right.
Right. And so I think that's really important when you're training new people, because a lot of new folks, like they're on probation, they understand that because of our like hierarchy and our structure and stuff. They're in a position where their tendency is to try to get good enough so that they don't get on somebody's radar for a skill. And that doesn't mean that you understand it, and that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to actually pull it off in the field, right? And so, are we training people for actual performance in the field, or are we just training people so that they can check a box?
Mask their deficiencies.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you end up with you end up with that, which is very superficial understanding of a subject and all that, because really what you want, like MCTI talks about, Coleman Ruiz talks about, when you're training somebody, you do it, and it's kind of the crawl, walk, run thing, but it's a little bit better description. I like. He says, first you do it slow, then you do it at speed, at game speed, then you do it at game speed while you're fatigued, and then you do it at game speed while you're fatigued and under pressure. And once you've gone through that progression with a skill, at that point, you now have that skill where you're in what's called the more autonomous phase, and that's what you want to. That's your goal when you're teaching somebody a skill, is to get to that autonomous phase. And the autonomous phase means that the person is self-correcting on the fly, right? And so where you're doing something and you can feel like that's just a little bit off, I'm going to correct, instead of I'm going to be doing something and, like, if I'm teaching a hose handling technique and the nozzle just like sliding back through, I want somebody to get to the point where they feel that initial start to slide and they know how to correct it, but they don't have to devote a bunch of energy to correct it.
Right. Right.
And so, because that's a fireground reality, like if you, one of the things I think everybody should read would be the Marine Corps doctrinal paper 1, warfighting, right? And it talks about friction, right? And friction is its description of friction on on the in the battle space is really important. I think it's super applicable in the fire service, which is, friction is the source that makes the seemingly easy difficult, right? And so when you're training people, you're anticipating sources of friction. Fatigue is a source of friction. grip strength is a source of friction. Audio exclusion because you're amped up is a source of friction. There are self-imposed sources of friction, like are we communicating too much? Are we expecting too many decision-making points from this person? Are we loading them with too many options, right? Like all
Nice.
things add to friction, and the more friction there is on the fire ground, the more clunky and cumbersome, the less they're going to be able to perform. And so I think it's really important to constantly be evaluating sources of friction, both like self, crew, and department wide sources of friction that we have. Source of friction can be, you know, if you're a company officer or something like that, and your firefighter is, you know, nervous or in their head, or they're self-conscious or something like that because of how they think you view them, right? Like that can be a source of friction.
Right.
Now I have my firefighter thinking about what I think of them instead of a I want them in a flow state, not thinking about like these external factors. I want them kind of like single mission focused and feeling like they're kind of in the zone, single mission focused on this task in front of them. I don't want them thinking about what I think of them. And so there's all of these different things. If we're constantly on the lookout for weeding out sources of friction, we're going to see, it's going to open your eyes a lot more to things that, you know, for me personally, this is what happened. It's opened my eyes to a lot of things of like, oh man, I didn't even realize that was friction, but that is causing.
Right. That awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. Radio traffic, right? Like how much radio traffic do you, this is more of like a department thing, right? But
Sure.
when we went to Blue Card, it was told that, you know, we would end up with less radio traffic. We have never had more radio traffic ever. I mean, it was unreal, the amount of radio traffic that we had, to the point where, like, I remember one fire vividly right after we adopted it, where I was on the nozzle. I had, you know, two windows of fire and a door that was just blowing like a blowtorch. And I'm sitting there trying to call for water. And I'm getting bonked over the radio as a first in nozzle, and I can't even get over, like, charge the line. There's so much radio traffic going on, right?
Right.
That's,
I love it. All right, I'm switching quick gears, downshift and switch. I want decision making at the door because it's one of my favorite topics you talk about, man, and I want to get it into this episode so that people that listen and make it this far will get this tidbit of knowledge. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I kind of, you know, alluded to it a little bit earlier, but the, you know, 3 levels, right? I want to know, do I have fire below me, on my level, or above me, right? And what do those fires look like? What do they sound like? What do they feel like? Because I got to have more than just a visual. And then the other thing is, you know, that size up, I want it to be like a complementary size up where I've got my my officer. So when the officer goes and does a 360, they have a certain vantage point, right?
Sure.
That vantage point is the exterior of the building on the way around. They're doing their walk around, you know, shouting at the building or doing whatever they do. And I'm stretching the line. So the firefighter's stretching the line to the front door, typically, right? Or the main ingress egress door. And so there's a couple of different vantage points, and, you know, you'll hear with size up gets thrown around like, oh, you got to size up the fire. And then there's all of these different like acronyms and all that kind of stuff that get used, you know, and size up becomes this thing as if all size up is collecting like random information about the fire.
Right.
So for me, what size up is to me, and I use this whether I'm in the officer seat or the firefighter, riding backwards, whatever. For me, size up is, it's got to be this. It's got to be quick. It's got to be systematic, and each piece of information I gain has to result in some sort of action, right? And so I'm not just gaining information just to gain information, because back to Pareto's principle, too much information, it's going to cloud my judgment. And so for a size up on a building, I'm looking for, is it below me, on my level, or is it above me? And I'm using the officer's 360 of the outside of the building coupled with the firefighter's first look at the interior of the building and marrying those two up together. They're complementary size ups from each other. The driver also has their own, like, they're detached, right? Mentally, they're a little bit more detached. And so they're not looking at it from a perspective of, I'm about ready to crawl into this thing. they're kind of detached, so they're going to notice things that the firefighter and the officer are less likely to. So if everybody knows that their job is to size up and relay only pertinent information that's going to result in action, then as a company, we're going to function better. We're going to actually key in on stuff that is more valuable. So for the firefighter stretching that line out front door, I'm just looking at, is there, and this is something like Scott Corrigan really helped me dial this in with especially the on plane, and he had it simplified better than anybody I'd heard before. And so if you have an intake and an exhaust, then the fire is on your level. Okay, if air is pulling across the floor, the fire is on your level. If you have all exhaust, you don't have any air pulling in the building, the fire is below you. If you have all intake, the fire is above you. Okay. And so now there's a couple little caveats. Now, what does that do for me? What does that information do for me? Okay. If the fire is below me, if I don't have any air, if I open up a door and I do not have any air pulling in the building, the fire is either below me or it's wind driven, would kind of be the other caveat. If it's wind driven, like,
yeah, you should. Yeah. Hopefully be aware.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't really like hit on that. I say it as a caveat, but it's really very apparent when it's wind driven. And so if it's below me and the firefighter notices I don't have any air pulling in the doorway right here, I have no intake, right? And I'm not even going to go into where the intake is at. Just there's no air pulling inside the building. Throw the deadbolt, look for life, all that kind of stuff. Shut the doorway, the door back down on the deadbolt so it doesn't lock on itself. And then when that officer comes back around, I'm going to relay to them, hey, Cap, it looks like this fire is below us. What are you seeing? Right. And maybe they didn't catch it on their way around that it is in the basement or it is below us. But either way, it's kind of that check and balance system that we have where I'm getting a vantage point that they don't have. I get eyes on the inside first. They get eyes on the outside walking around. And now we up real quick. And if nothing else, it causes a pause for a second. Like, you know what? Let me double check that. It may change our game plan where we're going to try to get on plane, get a line to a exterior door somewhere, on plane with basement if it's available, something like that. Or it may result in still going forward through the front door, right? And I'm not going to get into all the details with that. But if nothing else, it causes us to pause for a second and check, are we crawling over a basement fire?
Right. The awareness. It's really all about the awareness.
Right. And yes. So if I show up like, Manny's picture he had about the window showing fire on floor 2, right? I'm anticipating from the outside that when I open up that front door, it's going to be clear on floor 1. It should be crystal clear. If it's not, then that tells me everything that I need to know right there, right?
Right. You're starting to ping, yeah.
It is not, it may be up there right now, but it started low. And so I need to search for it low, right? And so that's how that size up process for me, that door read, that simple on below me, on my level, or above me. If I can just get that, then that's going to result in where I'm going with my nozzle a lot more than just randomly noting information about like exposures and power drops and all of that kind of stuff. Right. So it's important, but doesn't change much.
No. In fact, I've marked a few sound bites that might be the sound bite for the thing, but that 1 minute 23, 1 hour 23 minute mark when you talked about, yes, it actually impacts the decision making. I love to ask about books or books that you think firefighter. We haven't even, and it's the deal. I need to have you back on, and we're just going to say no audience questions because we literally got to like two planned topics, and that's not my point because this has been an invaluable scrap, man. I mean that 100%. But we didn't even get to our nerdy stuff that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about books or books that you think firefighters should be reading. I always love to ask it. I am 69 books planned to read in my own reading schedule. So please add to it.
Oh man, dude, I knew this question was coming. And so I brought my Kindle out so that I could,
I love it.
I could scroll through, dude, it's tough. I have at any given time, I'm reading like 3 or 4 books. And so it's rough for me because I'm a victim of like recency bias with this. Okay. So first off, cannot recommend this book enough, but Life as Sport by Dr. Jonathan Fader. I think must read for anybody in the fire service, man. That is absolutely up there. One of my favorite books I've ever read. Another one. So yeah, well, I won't.
I like to see the brain working.
Well, there's another book that I've been reading lately that I've been really liking. It's called The Coddling of the American Mind, but that's kind of that's a different. It's really good. I think there's a lot to benefit from it, but
Okay.
also, especially training new people. Like one of the things it talks about with training new people. Well, it talks about like raising. It's talking a lot about raising kids and stuff, but they talk a lot about risk. And they talk a lot about how well-intentioned risk aversion creates timid and creates dependent decision makers going forward. And to be honest, like I do think that is a kind of an epidemic in the fire service where good things that are well-intentioned.
Almost like helicopter parenting spin out. Is that what we're talking about? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So you end up with helicopter parenting, and I've been like thinking a lot about this. I'm just gonna, I'll give you where I'm at mentally right now.
Sure.
Right, but where I'm at right now is I think there's kind of this diametric opposition where you've got the line staff, the boots on the ground, the line. They're like the dog pulling on the end of the leash. That's how you want them, right? You want the dog pulling on the end of the leash, like that bias for action. You want them to feel like they can get in there. You want them feeling like invincible and fearless and all that kind of stuff. Like we can conquer any mountain. Like that's how you want them operating. And then you've got the person holding the leash whose job it is to kind of like pull back. And I think they kind of need each other a little bit because if you let that dog off the leash, and that dog is just left to its own devices, it's going to go run and chew holes through the neighbor's fence and become a menace to society.
Right. Just uncontrolled freelancing. Yeah.
Totally. Right. So you do need some pullback on the leash, but the problem is when that dog is like, maybe dog's not the best analogy. Maybe kid's a little bit better where like my kids are like free range chickens. They're just out in the woods and doing their thing and climbing trees and all that kind of stuff, which there's a certain amount of risk that is associated with that. I mean, they freaking fall out of trees all the time. They get hurt. They do, and I don't want my kids to get hurt, but at the end of the day, like I want them to take some risks and I want them to figure some stuff out because it's going to make them more safe ultimately in the long run. If I helicopter parent them though, I make them less safe. Right. And so even though it's well-intentioned, I make them less safe by pulling back on that leash too hard. And when I'm constantly telling somebody about all the dangers there are, like I show up and I start with a firefighter and I have them come in and they think like I'm going to be, some ass kicking, like, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to make a difference for humanity. And then all of a sudden I turn around and I tell them like, read all these line of duty death reports. And I want you to watch all these, videos of what could go wrong and watch this truss video, this truss failing, this truss is going to fall on you. If the truss doesn't fall on you, the basement fire is going to swallow you up. If the basement fire doesn't swallow you up, the gas line is going to explode. Like I just equip them with all of the terrible boogeymen that could jump out and kill them without balancing it with like, hey, here's all the things there are to save and all the things there are to gain. Right. If I don't like balance that well, what I do is I paint this implicit picture of all there is risk. Right.
A bias towards risk aversion almost.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I end up like well-intentioned trying to protect them, but I coddle them to the point where they become timid and afraid to take risks. And then I wonder like, what is going on with my fire department? Why don't I have, folks who are out there performing well? It's because they're just playing prevent defense on every fire.
Right on, dude. Okay, so next scrap with Jay Bonnifield is going to be how to raise your kids and how to raise your rookies.
Well,
It's
Man.
gonna be a good one. It's gonna be a good one, and I mean that. It's funny, but I think it's needed massively. Okay, coddling of the American mind.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bump that up on my freaking list.
You should read it. The End of Trauma is another one. I think everybody should read that. It's by George Bonanno. So he's a doc that studied
You said the end of trauma.
the end of trauma.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, Been very eye-opening to me, and it's a little bit of a different take than some of the. I want to tread lightly here because I'm not an expert on PTSD, but I found this book incredibly beneficial for myself. In that, like his argument in a lot of cases is that PTSD is overdiagnosed in a lot of cases, and he has a lot. He's got one of the biggest studies on PTSD to date in history, and he studied active duty combat vets that were deployed, like 750,000 of them, and he a lot of his case from the psychological perspective is like he's building a case for hey, are we missing by overdiagnosing PTSD, are we missing some value in being able to equip people with tools to like be proactive and to be able to manage residue and to be able to essentially process stuff effectively with some tools that we can equip them with and be proactive instead of reactive like this sponge that's just going to absorb trauma.
Are we providing them with excuses, or excuses ain't the right word? I know.
No, I know what you're getting at, though,
right?
right? It's a really touchy subject.
Sure. No. Yeah. Are we providing them with a crutch that keeps them from heal? Yeah. No. That's a great.
Are we helping or are we hurting?
I haven't read the book, obviously, but I know that's fascinating already. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're good. You're exactly on the right track. And I don't think there's any like perfect word without. It's a really touchy subject, and it's not something that I want to like say, hey, no, it's
right,
or, whatever. Like the reason why I wanted to read the book is because I want to get some different perspectives on this, and I've really gained. I cannot recommend that book enough, especially with how like prevalent that subject is in the fire
right
now. Because it kind of made me look at it a little bit differently about like, hey man, I'm not just this sponge sitting here like absorbing this stuff. Like, I can process stuff and I can work through this. And there are points in which certain people and whatever can reach where they do enter that zone where they do need that special help, but like starting out with some of these tools and being able to be proactive and look at it from a perspective like, hey, I got this, right? I think has been really valuable for me. So yeah, those are kind of my three.
Okay. Love it, dude. And again, I think Life as Sport, you suggested that one last time. I think it's sitting around number 30 on my current list, but I could be wrong on that.
Dude, you gotta read it.
It's moved up like 30 spots, so I got a lot of books to read.
Yeah. That's it, man. Gates, and if you're looking for something like, I guess it's nonfiction, but Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield.
Yes. Dude, I love Pressfield. Pressfield is absolutely one of my favorite authors.
Mine too, man. I'll read
my
it.
next book is a complete ripoff of just Pressfield stuff, so.
Is it?
100%. I'll tell you.
You got to dive into that stuff, man. It keeps you reading.
100%. Okay. We have the 5 questions for firefighters. You've been through them before because you were here back in the 80s. When I say 80s, I mean episode, not the actual decade, which I'm not sure you were alive for. But not my point. My point is we now have the next 5 questions for firefighters. So my question for you now, Jay Bonnifield, is are you ready for the next 5 questions for firefighters?
Let's do it.
Here we go. Number 1. By the way, the answers are completely your opinion. There is no right or wrong, and the points are arbitrary. They're assigned by me with the help of the audience if they so choose to participate. Number 1, what single characteristic makes the difference between a run-of-the-mill firefighter and the top-tier, go-to, badass firefighter?
Bias for action. Yeah. So talking about the analogy of the dog pulling on the end of the leash. Man, if I have somebody who has a bias for action, um, that is somebody who, it's kind of like Jocko would call it the default aggressive, or
Yeah.
right. If I have somebody who's in that frame of mind, that bias for action, that comes in everywhere from like how you act around the station, how you manage personal conflict with people, how you look at your fitness, like how like that's been one thing. Um, so fitness has been something, for a while. Like I'll just go on a little rabbit trail with this one. As if we use the word fitness as if like there's this magical point in which you become like you're fit now and you're good, you're fit. Like, dude, fitness, it's I hate using that word even. It's work capacity, right? Like that is you should be chasing as high of a level of as high of a level of work capacity as you can possibly have, right? You should be stronger, you should be faster, you should be more explosive, you should be continuing to like gain in those areas. And you know what, I work with some dudes who are about to retire or retiring, and they did it. I've watched them do it. They were animals all the way until the very end, and then some, right? They just made lifestyles of trying to get better. And are they as strong at 57 as they were at 30? Maybe not necessarily, but they're definitely still really strong people, right? They didn't slack off and just go like, oh, I'm going to hit the elliptical because I just want to maintain like core strength and flexibility. Like, no, 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 dude. Core strength for them was they were still picking heavy weights up off the ground and moving weight. And like, that's core strength, is, bracing against picking heavy stuff up. Right. And like, they were continually picking stuff up that was heavy and continually pushing their bodies and continually like, yeah, flexibility is part of it, but like strength and end range of motion, all of that kind of stuff. So anyways, a bias for action when it comes to your fitness means you're not content with I'm fit, right? Like, no, I've still got work to do and I'm going to continue to push it. And same thing on the fire ground, right? A bias for action is I don't need to be, to wait to be told what to do. I don't need to sit here and think about, am I making the right decision? Like I want somebody who is going to violently execute a good plan now instead of waiting for the best plan 10 minutes from now, like Patton talks about, right? We're going to make tweaks as time goes on through after action reviews and all that kind of stuff. We'll get that stuff honed in. But if everybody shows up with a bias for action instead of playing off their, prevent defense, playing off their heels, then fires tend to go much better. So,
no, 1,000%. And I would tell you this: you had me at bias for actions. You had max points at bias for action. My all-time favorite quote, and I know you haven't taken my class, but my all-time favorite quote in all of history is General Patton when he says, "A violent plan executed now is better than a perfect plan next week." And
yes.
100%, man, 100%
Yep.
max points, no doubt about it. So, question 2: if you could go back in time and give Jay Bonnifield one piece of advice as a rookie, what would it be?
Give Jay Bonnifield some advice as a rookie. Man, I would say, um, I would say if I could give myself one piece of advice going backwards, it would be more interested and be less interesting. Um, be more be more interested in be like basically listen more, right? Listen more. And so I grew up in, playing sports, and that's part of what drew me to the fire service was, growing up in weight rooms and growing up in, team atmospheres where and part of what came out of the backside of that was, I think sometimes I've struggled in my career to maintain a balance. Like John Sparrow put out this quote the other day about being just funny enough to entertain your crew, but not so funny that you get sent to HR.
Right.
Uh, I cannot tell you how true that is for me, and so I think that that is something that, and it has been something throughout my career that just personally I've failed at a few times, and I've gotten dinged by it before,
Right
and
on.
I think more like I served a 2 shift suspension for it. For joking around with the crew too much, and it ended up just yeah, we end up crossing some lines we shouldn't have, and it's something I look back with the deepest of regrets. And I think I don't realize sometimes when we're joking around, like, oh man, I might be alienating some of my crew members here and not really realizing it. And so I think that that's something, just being super hard on myself, introspective, is going backwards, is be more interested and be less focused on being interesting, be more focused on being interested.
I like it. I like it. And it sounds like you have some experience to go with it. Number 3, what is your favorite training drill?
Favorite training drill. This might come as a little bit of a shocker because we've been talking about like hose and nozzle stuff, but I think my favorite training drill is when I'm working on a ladder and we take the ladder out and we empty all the ladders. We do the aluminum force as fast as we can. Every ladder up, fully extended, as fast as we can. And the reason why I like that is because it's a good workout. It's kind of a put your head down and work. You don't really have to think about it a whole lot. Like you're just getting after it, chucking ladders all over the place, and everybody. It's kind of a good way to be super competitive with each other, and like you can heckle somebody if they can't tip the 35 up by themselves and all that kind of stuff. And
Right
so
on.
it just builds good camaraderie. It's a good skill drill, and man, for me, hose is easy to go out and I get to mess around with the hose and nozzles and stuff like that all the time. And so it's something I find like, I do it a lot. And ladders are something where all of a sudden wake up some days on shift and be like, I haven't touched a ladder for a while. And so that's been something that's one of my favorites.
I will not lie. I was surprised by the answer. I thought that was a given already. And so max points and 100% for the curveball. But I absolutely love and respect your reasoning behind it. Number 4, what mistake have you learned the most from in your fire service career?
Mistake have I learned the most from? I I think the mistake that I've learned the most from is letting the fire service become too much of who I was. I think is the biggest mistake that I've learned from. I had a buddy, Big City Schmitty, I call him, but he's been one of my best buddies for forever. And so like our families are really close, our wives are really close and stuff like that. And he said something to me a long time ago when we were both trying to get hired full time. And we were just, killing ourselves trying to get hired. Like both of us were working 2 or 3 jobs and, working part-time at the fire department together and stuff. And he ended up taking another job somewhere, and I was kind of wondering like, oh man, what's going on? Why are you slowing the pace on testing and stuff? And he said, dude, I could fall off a ladder tomorrow and the fire service would be gone forever, but my wife would still be there.
Yeah.
That's what matters. And that impacted me in ways like I cannot, and I've told him this a bunch of times and he knows, but that impacted me in ways like it just was like, right. Because all I was thinking about was like, I got to get this job and like the fire service and, man. And then, get the job and, getting into it. And I love the training stuff and I love diving into all this kind of stuff. And just, hitting points where I got to check in with myself. And really what it's come through is a lot of kind of nudges from my wife about like, hey, you sound like you care more about work than you do about us,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is like one of the most painful things. One of the most painful things I could ever hear. But it's like, hey, dude, put your money where your mouth is. Like, if that's a perception, that's reality, right? It doesn't matter. I can say till I'm blue in the face about like, no, I care way more for my family, care way more for my wife and my kids than I do the fire service, right? But like, what does my time bank show?
Right.
Am I plugged in on my phone looking at stuff? Am I answering phone calls and emails and blah 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 blah? And there's a balance, right? It's good to go and invest in the fire service. But if you don't watch it and that fire service becomes a good chunk of who you are, then you're way out of balance. And that's just something I'm not willing to do. So if I'm going to say that my wife and my kids come first, then they need to come first by a country mile, so that it's
Yes.
unmistakable,
Yes.
right? I don't even want it to be close. So, I love this job. It's the best job for me, but this job is going to come to an end at some point, and they're going to keep on. I'm still going to be a husband, still going to be a father, and so that's where I'm putting my eggs in my basket.
Dude, that's one of the best answers I've heard to that in a long, long time. Max points 100% on question 4. Final question, number 5. You've had it before because it has not changed. Heavy fire and searchable space. Would you rather be assigned to the nozzle or first in on VES?
Dude, we're of course we're taking that nozzle. Of course.
Just checking. I had to go back and listen to 83 to see if you were going to be congruent. But
Yeah. I'm not even waiting for it. No, I'm not even waiting for this assignment. I'm turning my radio off and we're going in.
100%. There it is. Max points on number 5. That is the 5 questions for firefighters. The next 5 questions for firefighters, according to Jay Bonnifield, and that officially makes it 162 scraps in the books. My friend, Jay, if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do so?
Yeah, man. No, I really appreciate you having me on. It's been great as always. Like I said, we can, you said it at the beginning, we could sit here and talk and get in the weeds for hours. So, that's still true, man. But yeah, if people want to get a hold of me, yeah, I'm on Facebook, and that's kind of it. So get a hold of me through there. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. I live out here in the middle of the woods, man. We just got internet out here, so we're not super easy to get, not super plugged in.
Right on. Well, I appreciate you having the internet so that you can give me your evening, even though I know you have a lot of obligations, brother. It means a lot to me that you would give up your evening. And I want you to know that there is we got to actually get to the topics we were going to talk about. So I'm going to have you back yet again. I promise you.
Let's do it, man.
I love it, brother. Man, seriously, this already is one of the. I always feel that way because of recency and primacy, but I always feel like, man, this was such a great scrap. Zach King wants you to know, tell Jay he will always be my number 1 last call. Rob Fisher wanted you to know to try to be original, Jay.
So, try to be original.
Try to be original.
Yeah. No, I'll take that one, Robbie.
Lots of love. Okay, everybody out there, go to firehousevigilance.com. Man, I should have brought. Did I bring a copy of the book in here? No, I didn't. All right, but it is live. I'm super proud of it. It has been shipping. Like this one says not for resale, but the actual books are in. I've been shipping them all day long, stuffing them in envelopes. I've been signing them and sending them out. I'm super proud of it. I'm biased, but it's a phenomenal book. So please, man, go to firehousevigilance.com if you want a copy of the book. The newest thing is this: if you rate the book on Amazon or any place you can rate a book, but I'm pretty sure Amazon is the only one that really matters. But if you rate the book and give it 5 stars, take a screenshot, send it to me, just like the podcast. I'm bribing everybody out there. Send me a screenshot, and I will send you stickers. Whatever stickers you want, I will send you a sticker pack. Mutts don't scrap, etc. The five pack sticker pack, because 100% the ratings actually help out a ton. The Vigilantes, they are live, man. The Vigilantes, here's the crazy part. I went to do math the other day, and the Vigilantes has actually been around for a year. which is, it's kind of mind blowing the fact that the Vigilantes has been around for a year. So I was like, what can I do? What can be done to recognize? So for people who have been Vigilantes for a year, we're going to make a special coin. Right now we're discussing what are the values and what do we want to put on the coin. But the only way to get that coin will be to be a Vigilante for a year. If you've been one for a month, doesn't matter. You can't have the coin. When you've been a Vigilante for a year, you can get that original coin. So I think that's really cool. And we're still trying to kind of decide it. But anyway, if you want to be a Vigilante, go to firehousevigilance.com. All the information is there. It's not too late for the forum that's coming up at the end of the month where we're going to discuss On Combat. Although you better be a really fast reader because you got like 10 days to read that entire book and it's big. And then discuss it with us if you are a Vigilante. So all the housekeeping done. On to... Go ahead.
Go to Blinkist. You'll get it.
Yeah, just get the notes. Killer lineup of 2022 continues. Jay Bonnifield, I don't know if anybody wants to actually follow you up, but it just keeps on rocking and rolling. It does not get any better. So I said all that. Love my sponsors. Keyhose, Affordable Drill Towers, the speedswivel.com, and of course, Fit to Fight Fire. My brother, Jay Bonnifield, I hope you will come back and visit and spend another evening with me at some point in the future.
Dude, I would love to, man.
That's right.
Anytime I can talk, anytime I can talk to you, Corley. We're in for it. We're in for the long haul. I had my last cup of coffee at 3. That's usually my hard cutoff, is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I think it was a little extra. I think it was a little extra thick today.
Had that double shot in it.
Yeah. It was definitely had me cruising here. So
no matter what, I really am. I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna really focus in on the questions and the outline. I wish I could post the outline, but audience, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. You guys took over the show from the beginning and turned this into an amazing scrap because your questions were spot on. And you combine your questions with Jay's articulation and just general sexiness, let's just be honest. And boom, you have a mega scrap that's unbelievable. So I love you all. That's all I got. You make the scrap magical. Thank you for tuning in live. Remember, mutts don't scrap. I hope the tone stays silent unless it is burning. Everybody, stay safe out there.